In what is good news for the many borrowers who were scammed by their schools and still owe massive student loan debt as a result, the Biden education department is allowing their loans to be fully discharged. So now that would that result in an estimated $1 billion in debt relief out of the $1.5 trillion, or I should say $1.6 trillion in outstanding student loan debt. So not a very big amount, but it is something that will apply to about 72,000 borrowers who have already had their claims for debt relief approved under what's called the borrower defense process. Now, that allows borrowers who attended schools that are basically defunct, ones that had misled people. That allows the government to discharge these people's loans. Now, it's a big change from the Trump administration, of course, and Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos actually ended up going to court several times because she refused, even though the borrower defense for repayment is part of law, has been part of law for quite some time, even through the Trump administration. Betsy DeVos was just like, no, I'm going to make people pay these loans that should have been discharged. It should have been canceled in the first place because fuck you. That's why I'm Betsy DeVos. I have 10 yachts and I don't care about students that are struggling or former students that are struggling with bills they shouldn't pay. I don't care. I'm going to make you pay them anyway. So Betsy DeVos is trash. Betsy DeVos is garbage. That said, let me just go through some of the data here, some of the story. Now, after reviewing the data and the approach that rule used to calculate how much relief borrowers were entitled to, agency officials determined the methodology created, and this is from the DeVos time at the Department of Education, said that they created very difficult, if not impossible, standards for borrowers to get full relief. A senior Department of Education official told reporters. Borrowers, according to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, borrowers deserve a simplified and fair path to relief when they have been harmed by their institution's misconduct. Now, look, I agree with that. Okay. I also agree with what he said about saying that a close review of these claims and the associated evidence showed that these borrowers have been harmed and we will grant them a fresh start from their debt. In addition to discharging these borrowers' debt, the department will also reimburse any amount the borrowers already paid in the loans if applicable. So, look, I think this is a good move. Obviously, it's a deserved move under the law. Yes, 72,000 people will have debt relief from their student loans, from being defrauded. That's good. But it's not good enough. The department is still being sued by 200,000 former for-profit college students who were also defrauded, right? So now they had filed their claims for debt relief under this program and have under, the DeVos the DeVos's tenure stalled or denied. So their claims just weren't moving forward as a result of Betsy DeVos not wanting to pay them, right? Now, the department, however, is also, the Biden administration, as I reported earlier, they're protecting Betsy DeVos from having to testify. Now, why would they do that? She is the former education secretary. She had already been, put in contempt of court for stalling this. Why would you go out of your way to protect Betsy DeVos? That's ridiculous. She is the bad guy in this. She made sure that people who were defrauded still ended up having to pay. And in a lot of cases, having their paychecks garnished as a result of these debts. Why on earth would you do that? Part of the club, I guess. But the thing is, not only is the fact that they're, protecting DeVos ridiculous, but also they're not going to do anything about the massive amount of student loan debt that we have in this country. And that's really the big problem here. Okay. We need to cancel student loan debt. Point blank. Now, the Biden administration, Biden himself says, well, I don't want to cancel any more than 10,000. 10,000 what people have paid so far in some of the bigger loans, they've paid way more than that in interest. So I'm sorry, but $10,000 isn't going to mean a damn thing to the majority of borrowers. And I mean, and understand though, the majority of borrowers are not rich people, because that's what they're using. They're using this BS argument that, oh, no. If you cancel student loan debt up to $50,000, that's just going to help rich people. No, what it's going to do is it's actually going to help the Black community. So now, according to the numbers themselves, Black borrowers actually accumulate far more student loan debt than white peers, because, and there's a result of it's a result of course, these racial factors leading to Black households having less wealth. And so since you have less wealth and less opportunities to go to college, generally, like you don't have your parents that are able to pay for your college tuition, you end up having to take out more and more loans. And of course, there's also racist and practices in giving out loans, higher interest rates, and things like that. And so there are problems here. You also have predatory for-profit colleges that target Black students. You also have racial wage gaps across industries that leave Black college graduates basically earning less money than their white counterparts for doing the same job. And so you end up with the Black community being way far behind and with more student loan debt than white families. In fact, the average Black borrower has nearly $53,000 in outstanding student loan debt, while the average white borrower only actually has about $28,000.
Here's how I would approach that issue as a statistician or a political scientist, or no, as a psychologist, which I'm not, is how abstract you handle the race thing. In other words, you start out, and now y'all aren't quoting me on this. You start out in 1954 by saying nigger, nigger, nigger. By 1968, you can't say nigger. That hurts your backfire. So you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now. You're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things. And the byproduct of them is Blacks get hurt worse than white.
And if we understand what the dilemma of the white minority population on planet Earth is, and their key survival dilemma is that they are overwhelmingly outnumbered by people of color. And because of their genetic recessive state, they can be genetically annihilated.
And all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is Blacks get hurt worse than white. And subconsciously, maybe that is part of it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that if it is getting that abstract and that coded, that we're doing away with the racial problem one way or the other. You follow me? Because obviously sitting around saying we want to cut taxes, we want to cut this, and we want is much more abstract than even the busing thing. And a hell of a lot more abstract than nigger, you know. So any way you look at it, race is coming on the back burner.
So it makes sense to them. It makes sense to them to do whatever damage or harm to the Black population, because we are the population that is most feared.
Joe Biden ruled out the idea of canceling $50,000 worth of student loan debt per student who's currently struggling with student loan debt, by the way. Federal student loans are about $1.7 trillion in outstanding loans right now. And obviously it could really help to stimulate the economy if people don't have to deal with these overwhelming student loan debt payments every month. Now, during the CNN town hall, Biden was asked if he was willing to do this, if he's willing to cancel $50,000, and his answer was pretty awful. Here it is.
Loans are crushing my family, friends, and fellow Americans.
Me too.
The American dream is to succeed, but how can we fulfill that dream when debt is many people's only option for a degree? We need student loan forgiveness beyond the potential $10,000 your administration has proposed. We need at least a $50,000 minimum. What will you do to make that happen?
I will not make that happen.
Nando, aside from the fact that he said, I will not make that happen, which was awful, his face, like his facial expressions as she's explaining something that's obviously devastating for herself and her family is really, I found it insulting. I really didn't like the way he was looking at her, like almost as if like, oh, this isn't really a big deal. I mean, I'm not trying to read too much into his body language. I know that's a clownish point to make overall, but like he just didn't really seem that interested in hearing her out. And then he immediately followed her question with no, basically no.
Any white person or any person who is harmed in the system of white supremacy, who shouldn't be harmed, is harmed because of the system of white supremacy itself. The white supremacists are always to blame. Now, the white supremacists do not mind sacrificing some white people in the cause of supporting white supremacy. In other words, I mean, white people who may not believe in white supremacy, they, in order to support the system itself, the white supremacists will say, well, we know that we're in an illegitimate business. We're in a criminal enterprise, which is what the system of white supremacy is. So, in a criminal enterprise, we might have to lose a few of the members of our own mob, the members of our own criminal syndicate. And so we'll do that. We'll do the math, and if it's worth it, we'll sacrifice. We don't mind that. We'll lose a few in order to be able to conquer the many black people or keep them under control, the non-white people of the planet. So we'll sacrifice 2 or 3 million white people who really don't particularly want to be sacrificed. But hey, this is business. We got to stay in business. So we'll do it in the form of law enforcement officers, or we'll do it in some other form, but it's good for the machine to keep running. And they don't mind that.
Student loans are crushing my family, friends, and fellow Americans.
Me too.
The American dream is to succeed, but how can we fulfill that dream when debt is many people's only option for a degree? We need student loan forgiveness beyond the potential $10,000 your administration has proposed. We need at least a $50,000 minimum. What will you do to make that happen?
I will not make that happen.
The real problem is this, James. 2 decades, there will be 7 billion human beings on this planet. Most of them brown, yellow, or black. All of them hungry. All of them determined to love. They'll swarm out of their breeding grounds into Europe and North America. Hence Vietnam. An all-out effort there will give us control of South Asia for decades to come. And with proper planning, we can reduce the population to 550 million by the end of the century. I know. I've seen the data.
We sound rather like gods reading the Doomsday Book, don't we?
Well, someone has to do it. Not only will the nations affected be better off, but the techniques developed there can be used to reduce our own excess population. Blacks, Puerto Ricans, Mexican Americans, poverty-prone whites, and so forth.
Am I only a God nearby, declares the Lord, and not a God far away? Who can hide in secret places so that I cannot see them, declares the Lord? Do not I fill heaven and earth, declares the Lord.
By 2040, this country is going to be minority white European. Hear me? Minority white European. And you guys are going to have to start working more with Hispanics, who make up a larger portion of the population than y'all do.
All right, here we go. Maintain humanity under 500 million. So, how many people we got to kill?
I mean, we got to kill a lot of people.
Well, Monsanto's doing a good job. Maybe Monsanto, maybe they did this. Yeah, it's a good possibility. Who knows? But they want to kill plenty of people. Here we go.
We just know that they're killing a lot of people.
Here we go. Guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. Okay, well, that's eugenics.